Hi, I'm Judi Kidger, one of the co-leads of the Public Mental Health Programme. A large part of our Public Mental Health Programme has focused on children and young people, and I'm going to highlight 3 projects that focused in particular on the role of school culture in secondary schools and how this can influence mental health. Our first study looked at using pupil voice to improve school culture. Specifically, we looked at the feasibility and effectiveness of using a participatory action research approach. PAR seeks to enable action by involving study participants as co-researchers. And these co-researchers reflect on what they would like to change, plan and act to create change, observe the impact of those changes, and reflect on what further change is needed in a cyclical process. We worked in partnership with a local mental health charity to implement PAR in 3 schools. The charity provided facilitators to run the groups, and the study team undertook a qualitative evaluation of how well it worked as a method. Staff and student participants found taking part in PAR to be a positive experience. Not only did they feel they created positive change to the wider school culture, but these quotes from our interviews also suggest that being part of the group was a positive intervention in itself. And this may be because we worked with schools at the start to try and ensure the participants were students who may feel more marginalised in other areas of life and who don't always have a voice. The mental health charity facilitators also had the view that this project had made a difference for the schools and students who took part, and we'll hear from one of these now.
So I think what went well was that despite the challenges that they spoke about, the group did an amazing job of actually identifying stuff that they wanted to change and then actually doing, doing stuff about it, taking action. Despite all the difficulties with COVID and all the pressures that you get doing your A-levels, they made it through a couple of kind of cycles round of the sort of act, observe, reflect, plan cycle that you were talking about earlier. Yeah, that's what I say, Ramon. I think my impression was that it can make a difference. And I think probably in the context of the school, the pupils you've just been hearing from, I think it probably did begin to make a difference. And I think we'll hopefully carry on making a difference because the students were really motivated to kind of carry on with the work they'd started after the official PAR project ended and pass that on to the years below them. So there's a kind of continuum being set up. I think it was successful also in the sense it led to some really important conversations about mental health in relation to things around diversity. For example, we had a conversation where a member of the group was sort of explaining how we've been talking about the pressures of exams, and some students have been saying they felt that there should be more space in their sort of timetable to sort of unwind a little bit, and less just kind of less pressure around the sort of meritocratic approach we have in our education system around exams.
Moving on to our second study, the aim was to help identify support which may facilitate the building of a positive secondary school culture and protect student mental health, particularly in the wake of school closures during the pandemic. First, we undertook a rapid review of literature and discussed our focus and approach with a range of stakeholders, including the public and young people. This was followed by fieldwork in which we conducted in-depth interviews, focus groups, and documentary analysis in 2 contrasting schools. We found that there is a complex mix of factors that influence school culture and student mental health, but 3 key areas that schools might want to address to create a more positive culture are the tension between academic achievement and student well-being, and that definitely had echoes from what our practice facilitator was just talking about. Improving the ways that schools identify and respond to student mental health need, and the importance of attending to staff well-being and understanding the links between student and staff mental health. We hope that by providing detailed, individualised reports to the schools that were involved, we can enable them to highlight changes that they might want to make to be more supportive of mental health. Our final study looked at how to make the secondary school context more inclusive and supportive of LGBTQ+ students' mental health. And this study began with a realist review of the literature, and a realist approach creates context, mechanism and outcome groupings to help us understand how an intervention or a change might have an effect. And we used the findings of the review to inform the development of a programme theory, which showed there are multiple causal pathways within schools whereby poor mental health could be reduced for LGBTQ+ young people. We followed this up with fieldwork, so we undertook interviews with young people and relevant staff in schools, and we used our findings to refine our programme theory. So this is the final theory, and all the context, mechanism and outcomes are captured in this model. But to summarise, there were 3 broad causal pathways identified that were important. So the first was interventions for talking and support, developed safety and coping strategies for LGBTQ+ young people. Secondly, interventions that promote LGBTQ+ visibility facilitate what we're calling usualising, belonging and recognition. And thirdly, interventions that focus on a positive school culture overall create belonging, empowerment, recognition and safety. So the final pathway in particular very much aligned with the findings from the PAR study, that a focus on a positive school culture can be an important way to empower pupils and create an inclusive community, which has implications for improving mental health. These are our outputs across all 3 studies. We hope we have and will continue to reach a range of audiences, including academics, practitioners and public with our learning. The PAR toolkit is under development, but we hope that this in particular can extend the impact of that study by providing a practical guide for other schools to try this approach to make positive changes. Thanks very much for listening.